Hello to all my story lovers. Welcome back in Storytime channel. This is part 3 for Treasure Island. Now let's go to the chapter 10. Chapter 10 is the apple barrel. We work all night. I had never been so tired, but I still kept awake for each moment on the Hispaniola was new and exciting for me, while the main work Long John Silver, whom everyone called Barbecue, took up his crutch and at once began to sing the words I knew so well. 15 men on Deadsman's chest, and the crew joined in with yo ho ho, a bottle of rum. Just before dawn, the Hispaniola began her voyage to Treasure Island. She proved to be a wonderful vessel. Mr. Arrow turned out to be much worse than the captain thought. He was always drunk and seasick. One day it so happened that he disappeared over the railing completely. The captain now had to find a new mate. He took Israel Hands, and cunning-looking old seaman who was also a good friend of Long John Silver. In his own way, Long John turned out to be great seaman. He was very helpful, and the men loved him. His parrot was named Captain Flint, after the famous parrot. The captain and the squire, however, remained distant with each other. The squire didn't hide his displeasure towards the captain. The crew, however, was quite content. There was plenty of good wine and food and even a big barrel of apples on deck. Once, after sundown, I decided to go and get myself one juicy apple. The barrel was nearly empty, so I had to climb into the barrel to get one of the last few apples. Once there, I sat down and felt quite sleepy. I must have dozed off, for I woke up hearing muffled voices. I felt a body leaning against the barrel. I heard a voice and recognized it to be a Long John Silver's. I had only heard the first few words when I trembled with fear, for what I heard after that made me realize that the lives of the few honest men left on board depended on me alone. The famous pirate Flint was the captain of the ship called Walrus, and I was a quartermaster, said Long John Silver. It was on that voyage that I lost my leg and Pew lost his eyesight. There was so much gold on the ship that the crew was drawing blood from one another. I soon realized he was just telling lies to the youngest worker on the deck. It was clear that the boy was influenced by Long John Silver, who continued to flatter and impress him with his tales. I realized that gentlemen of fortune meant pirates, and that he was one of them. Just then, Israel Hands came up to speak to John. I want to know one thing, said Israel. How long are we going to stand off? I have had enough of Captain Somerset. I want to enter his cabin and kill him. Long John Silver turned angrily at him. You will kill the captain who is steering this blessed ship for us, the man who will lead us to the treasure. Are you out of your mind? You will do no such thing. You will wait and act on my signal only. But make sure you leave Somerset to me. Long John continued. I would very much like to wring that calf's head off with my bare hands. He turned to the lad, Dick, and told him to get an apple from the barrel. You can imagine my shock and terror as I sat in the barrel. Luckily, Israel unknowingly saved my life by saying that the thought of the mutiny made him too excited to eat. They all decided to get themselves mugs of rum and went below decks. Suddenly, at that moment, the moon rose up and shout rang out all over the ship. Land ho! Now, next chapter 11, Council of War. Everyone started running onto the deck to see the land. The crew gathered at the stern of the ship, including Dr. Livesey and myself. The fog had lifted, and in the moonlight we saw in the distance two low hills about a couple of miles apart. Rising behind one of them was the third and higher hill, whose peak was still buried in the fog. I could hear Captain Somolet giving order for the ship to dock. He then turned towards us and asked if any one of us had been to this land before. Yes, sir, replied Long John Silver. I came here when I worked as a cook with a trader. This island is called Skeleton Island, a place where pirates live. He was explained that the big hill whose peak was still buried in the fog was called the Spy Glass. This was because this hill was used as a lookout by the pirates when they had to unload the loot from the ships. On hearing this, the captain asked Long John to identify whether this was the same place as shown in the map. Long John was disappointed that the map was not the one that belonged to dead captain, but freshly drawn map. He confirmed that this was the same place and told the captain to drop the anchor. The captain then ordered Long John to go down below decks. As Long John passed by me, he laid a hand on my shoulder, telling me that I would enjoy this island. I shuddered. I was scared of his cruelty, duplicity, and power ever since I had overheard this cunning conversation. Captain Somolet, the squire, and the Dr. Livesey were talking together on the quarter deck. I was longing to tell them what I had overheard from inside the apple barrel. However, I didn't want to disturb them. Just then the doctor called me to his side. As soon as I was near enough to speak and not to be overheard, I said, "Doctor, let me speak. Get the captain and the squire down to the cabin and then make some pretense to send for me. I have terrible news." The doctor's face showed no worry as he turned toward the squire and the captain. They spoke for a while, and though no one gave any signs of concern, I knew that the doctor had given them my message. The captain called all his crew on the deck and told them that the place they had been sailing to had been reached. He praised them for the wonderful job they had done to reach there, and informed them that the squire, the doctor, and he were going down to drink everyone's health. The crew cheered after him. The cheer was so full and hearty that it was difficult to believe that these very men were after our blood. Soon afterward, they called for me. When I went down, I found all three seated around the table, a bottle of Spanish wine and some raisins before them. The doctor was smoking away with his wig on his lap, and I knew he was upset. The stern window was open, for it was a warm night, and you could see the moon shining behind. "Now, Hawkins," said the squire, "you have something to say. Speak up." I told them what I had overheard in the apple barrel. Nobody interrupted me till I was done. They were still, but they kept their eyes upon my face from the beginning till the end. The doctor asked me to sit down. They offered me wine and raisins and cheered me for my courage and good work. The squire and the captain realized their mistake in taking Long John Silver for this mission and allowing him to select the crew. They were shocked that the crew they were trusting actually wanted to harm them for the treasure. The captain then chalked out a plan. His plan had 3 steps. He said, Firstly, we must go on because we can't turn back. If I order the crew to leave now, they will rise to fight. Secondly, we have time before we get to the treasure. Thirdly, there are some crew members who can be trusted. We will plan our move when they are least expecting it. They identify the trustworthy crew to be Square's three servants, myself, the doctor, and the Square, and the captain himself. I was given the responsibility to keep a lookout for any odd happenings and to keep my ears open for any further news. I began to feel pretty desperate and helpless, and yet it was indeed through me that the safety came. However, the truth was that there were only 7 out of the 26 on whom we knew we could rely, and out of these 7, one was a boy. Now, the next chapter, My Shore Adventure, chapter number 12. The island looked different when I came on deck the next day. The surface was covered with grey woods. The hill ran upward past the vegetation in spires of moss-clear rocks. They were all shaped funnily, and the one shaped like the spyglass, at least 400 feet high, was far the largest and the strangest formation on the island. As we neared the curve, we didn't hear a single sound except for the waves crashing. All of us who had met last night were worried about Long John. We decided to meet in the cabin once more. If I gave another order, said the captain, there will be mutiny. If I don't, Long John will know that I am holding back because I know what he is up to. Well, asked the Square, what can we do? The captain went on deck and announced the outing. Whoever would like to may go ashore. I will fire a gun half an hour before sundown. That is when you must return to the ship. With that, the men jumped up, for they were eager to find the treasure. In the end, 13 men went ashore and 6 stayed abroad. I decided to hide myself in one of the boats, but unfortunately, Long John saw me. At that moment, I regretted my actions. The moment my boat landed, I jumped off and ran into the woods. I ran until I could do so no longer. I could hear Long John calling out my name. I was so happy to have given Long John Silver the slip that I began to enjoy exploring island. I came across some marshy land full of swaying willows and odd-shaped trees that rose from the swamps. There was a sandy stretch that went on for about half a mile, lined with pine trees. On the far side of the hill stood one of the hills with its jagged peak shining brightly in the sun. The crew was far behind me. I went in the forest to look around. I managed to see a rattlesnake coming out from a rock with its head raised and fangs open. I saw huge tortoises, magical flowering plants that you can only imagine. Suddenly, I heard a rustle among the bushes. I figured my shipmates must be close, so I ran crouches behind the nearest tree and quietly waited. I heard voices, one of whose Long John Silver's. I inched closer to catch their conversation. Mate, he was saying, you are more valuable than gold to me. That's why I am warning you now. You can't change the plan. Save yourself by the joining in. Tell me, what could they do to me if they found out that I was talking to you right now? Silver, said the sailor, you may have let yourself be led away, but not me. He turned his back on Long John Silver and marched away, but he was not destined to go far. Long John leaned back, aimed his crutch, and launched it towards the unfortunate man. Its point hit the center of the Tom's back and he fell down with cry. He was given time to recover for Long John, quick as a monkey, was on the top of him with his knife out. He stabbed him twice and ran up right up to the hit, killing him. I managed not to faint as I watched Long John Silver's wipe off the blood. Panting at the same time, he then took out a whistle from his pocket and blew it twice. I knew he had called out for the others. If they had killed two honest men, would they not kill me too? I began to crawl back, and as I did, I heard a chorus of voices. I turned and ran through the thicket. I didn't know how I would be able to get back to the ship. I knew that if I was caught, the men would wring my neck. I said my goodbyes silently to the Hispaniola, to the doctor, to the squire, and to the captain. There was nothing left for me except death by starvation or a death at the hands of the mutineers. I ran until I reached the foot of Little Hill, my heart pounding. A fresh wave of fear brought me to a standstill. Now, the next chapter, chapter number 13, The Man of the Island. I saw a figure leap with a great speed behind the trunk of the pine tree. I could not tell whether it was a man or a monkey. It was dark and shaggy. I started running away, but that creature started chasing me, and I was more afraid of it that I had been a Long John Silver, but I remember that I had a loaded pistol with me. I stopped and turned around to face the creature. He stopped running and started walking toward me. It was a man. I asked him who he was. Ben Gunn, he answered, his voice rusty from the lack of use. I haven't spoken to anyone in more than 3 years. He was sunburned and bearded. His lips were cracked and his clothes were nothing more than pieces of an old ship's canvas tied together. I asked if he had been shipwrecked. He said that he had been marooned. I knew what that word meant. It was severe punishment for any sailor where someone accused of a terrible act is left all alone on an island. He went on to tell me that he would make me a rich man and quickly asked if the sheep belonged to Flint. Somehow I trusted the man and I told him that the sheep did not belong to Flint and that he was dead, and also that some of his men were murderers and mutineers. Are you talking in a particular about a man with one leg? He gasped. I nodded in agreement. Seeing him shiver and turn pale, I told him all that had taken place so far. He asked me if the squire would take him on, give him £1,000 if he helped. I said that he would. This is what he revealed to me. I was on board with Flint's men. When Flint had gone ashore with 6 men and buried the treasure, he killed all 6 of them, and he never told a soul where the treasure was kept. Those who asked were told that they were welcome to stay on the island and find the treasure. They all refused. Of course, 3 years later, I was on another ship, and when I saw the island, I told the crew that I would find the treasure. After 3 days of searching and not finding it, they cursed me and left me here with only a musket, a spade, and a shovel. He added that I should tell the squire that when not pining for cheese and home, Ben had been occupied with another matter that would interest him. I told him there was no way to get back to the ship. Well, said the bin, pointing to the cove, we can always use that boat that I have built. I keep it by a white rock that lies farther down toward the shore. Suddenly we heard cannon fire and gunshots ringing through the air. I knew that there was a fight on board ship. Now the chapter number 14, how the ship was abandoned. Narrative as added Dr. Livesey. The afternoon when the two boats were ashore, the captain, the squire, and I started talking to the same time, keeping an eye on the 6 men who were left on the boat. Sitting and sculling, Hunter came a moment later and told us that Jim had gone ashore. We were disheartened instantly. It was decided that the hunter and I should go ashore and find out more. We went directly for the stockade and which was marked on the map. It was a sturdy, well-protected place with a freshwater spring and high fence. Perfect for defense. We soon heard the cry of man being killed and we immediately thought it was poor Jim Hawkins. We rowed back to the ship and found the squire and one of his men looking very pale. We put Red Ruth in the gallery with loaded guns to stand guard. Hunter brought the jolly boat around while Joycey and I loaded it with gunpowder, weapons, biscuits, pork, and my medicine chest. On the deck, the captain had a gun pointed to the crew. He was saying, "Mr. Hands, we will shoot the first man who moves." The shock men ran below deck to find Red Ruth, armed and ready. They came back up again and skidded to a halt upon seeing the captain's gun. We had already made it to shore by then. We left Joycey to guard the stockade while we quickly unloaded our things. We then rowed back to the ship, thoroughly exhausted. Once there, we loaded the jolly boats with more cargo and got ready to row back to shore once more. But first, we took all the guns that we could and dumped them overboard. Hearing voices from the shore made us realize that our time was up. Before loading everything into the jolly boat, the captain called down to the men below decks, "Abraham Gray, I am speaking to you. I order you to follow your captain. You are different from the rest. I give you 30 seconds to join me. Hurry. I risk my life and the lives of my friends here." The moment he finished saying this, he heard a scuffle and Gray appeared with a knife, cut on his face. We got into our jolly boats and headed out. Now this is the end of the part 3. Part 4 will coming soon. Till then, take care. Bye bye. Subscribe my channel.